in Tennessee, for example, these guys and gals, they come from very far away. Tennessee is a very big state, 2 time zones, 95 counties, and they only get like 30 grand for the whole session. And the session goes from January to April. So it isn't even a full-time job. So everybody up there has a different job. So the temptation to say, oh, if I voted this way, that would be great. It's there. I'm not going to say it's impossible. And the devil's always like whispering in someone's ear. So there is there, but a term limit would be interesting to see if it changes that, but it's not perfect because they get paid a lot of money to be lobbyists once they know where all the doors and bodies are buried, right? They can just stay up there and work full time at the better job that pays better to be able to serve those steaks and whiskey drinks instead of accept them. There's that. And they will never do it because every single legislature in America, all the way up to U.S. Senate and Congress, they have to legislate it for themselves. And so 51% of them are not going to say, sure, let's change the Constitution and put in term limits because we are so corrupt, we are so dirty, so bad that it's the right thing to do. They'd be like, but I'll also cut off my nose to spite my face. So I don't know. It would have been nice if the founding fathers would have just figured that one out and did it themselves, but it's not there. And I don't see self-correction happening anytime soon. That's why you have to wait for a big scandal to erupt and the feds have to swoop in and somebody's put, $100 bills in their freezer, or that one guy who just went down from New Jersey who had gold bars in his underwear. Like, it has to get so bad before they can actually say, we can't defend this one. You got to go and between now and then. So yeah, term limits would be nice, but it's wishful thinking because they just won't do it.
Have you ever heard of sortition?
Sortition?
Using, it's like semi-random choice, elected representatives or positions of power. It wouldn't be completely random, but, let's say you're in an organization and you throw your hat in the ring and, someone is chosen as random from a pool of people that have thrown their hat in the ring instead of, they're winning an election, let's say, and they would have a term limit and all that. And it's a very unusual concept, but it might be something that's, you want to look into. Again, it's called sortition. It's like a very different way of running an organization. And there may be a couple of organizations in the world that kind of run on it, but it's a very unusual concept for you to consider.
It would be. I'm not a big fan of things that aren't direct choice of the voter, one man, one vote, so to speak. And so like these ranked choice voting that happened in Alaska, I'm not a fan of that. I saw them trying to put that in Seattle, and they were smart enough to realize that didn't work. There's a lot of voter integrity issues that would prevent really anything. There's also the Convention of States that people talk about, and they also talk about putting term limits into that so that it becomes a constitutional rule that all states would have to follow. But I think that's also a very long shot thing. So we're kind of stuck with the system right now. The fact that they were able to even get mail-in ballots and delayed counting of votes past election day and a lot of the other problems that we've seen, that they were able to get them in the first place kind of means they're there to stay. It's very difficult to undo some of this once it's already there. And I wish we could have, go back in a time machine and say, okay, we're not even going to fall for the ranked choice voting idea or the mail-in ballot idea or the election night becomes election week, becomes election month. All right. But the Pandora's box is open on that.
What about some of the movements for certain states to redraw their lines or break away, like Texas or, Oregon and Idaho, I guess, are considering some of the counties wanted to secede or voted to secede and, join Idaho from Oregon. Have you been aware of like those kind of stories or dealt with them at all?
Absolutely. Yeah. Greater Idaho is supposed to carve out the most conservative part of Eastern Oregon and Washington to become this big, beautiful state of Idaho, which is not as conservative as you might think. And I know this because I cover it. It's one of my states that we want to, highlight that doesn't get a lot of news. Even the former governor of Washington State, who was responsible for a lot of the damage done, is moving to Idaho as his, retirement space. So I'm well aware of it and I love it and I like it because it's grassroots. I think anything grassroots is fantastic, but I have to remind people sometimes we fought a civil war over this, and that was ugly. And it was the worst time in American history, actually. I don't like studying that time period much, but I do know all about it. The federal government doesn't like the idea of any parts of our country pulling off and doing something independent like that because we are a federal government and they all signed the Constitution Pact, and even the states that were admitted after 1776.